Sorry, guys. I had a tickle in my throat right before I hit the button. Sorry. Good morning. How is everybody today? Sorry about that. Jeez. Good morning, Terry. Good morning, Judy. Let's see what Judy has for us today. Jurors in the man, what happened? I was fine. I was fine, and right before I clicked the button, it started. Okay. Jurors in the murder retrial of Phil Spector visited his LA home after the judge set conditions on the use of an outdoor fountain there. Prosecutors said that on the trial one jury visit, the music producer tried to increase the fountain's volume. This had been done to suggest his chauffeur could not have clearly heard an alleged murder confession, they say. Judge Fiddler did not allow the fountain to be on. Hey, Jill. So that was in the, let me see. So on the second visit, the fountain wasn't on. But on the first visit, he tried to increase the volume so it would be louder so they could say that D'Souza didn't hear what he said or misheard what he said. Man. I don't think that's something you're going to make up. Especially if he comes out of the house with a gun in his hand with blood spatter on him. I think you're going to remember what he said. So stupid. That's called consequences, Phil. I'd have no get up and go this morning, y'all. I don't know why. Had the alarm clock set for 6, kept hitting snooze, and then decided I was gonna. I have 2 alarms on my phone. I have a 6 o'clock alarm that's set for every day, and then I have a 7 o'clock alarm that's not set. So if I hit snooze like 3 times and then decide that I want to sleep in, then I hit the 7 o'clock alarm, and then I just go back to sleep till 7. And that's what I did today. And usually when the 7 o'clock alarm goes off, then I get up. But no, today I hit the snooze on the 7 o'clock alarm. I don't know why I'm not tired. I just wanted to sleep in. And so now I'm like, it takes me a while to get woke up, if you know what I mean. So, I'm not awake yet, I guess. Oh, no. I don't know why. I didn't get to walk yesterday because it rained. I really enjoyed my walk from the day before. So hopefully it won't rain today and I can walk again today. Maybe that'll make me more energetic. Because yesterday I was good. I was happy. I was energetic. It was great. And then today I'm like, ugh, again. So maybe the walk helped. Why are the dogs barking like crazy? Hold on, guys. correction, dog. Just Spike. He goes out, and then not even 5 minutes later, he's barking to come back in. He doesn't like it outside. Because there's yard monsters. What did you do, Judy? You're going to have to go to the doctor and get a booty thing for your foot if it's broken. Okay. Don't growl at her. She didn't do anything to you. She just looked at you. Doofus dog. Okay. We are still on Dr. Werner Spitz. It's doctor. Is it doctor? It's doctor, right? Yeah, doctor. And it looks like we're going to be on him for a while. This is part 3, and he has 8 parts, so. Spike, Aunt Judy said to behave. No growling. No, she wasn't even at the food. She just was a foot away from him, and he growled at her. He's getting out of control. He wants to be an only dog. I don't know why. He never has been.
Guns and the effect that they have on the human body. And when a gun is fired inside somebody's mouth, have you seen the effects of that in your experience? Damage occurs, the bullet going through tissue and hitting bone, things of that nature.
Yeah.
What kind of damage occurs?
The bullet goes from the muzzle straight out. The remain.
Dr. Spitz, how do you know, based upon your education and experience, that pressure changes?
Travis, do you need to do that right now?
Yeah, I think you do.
Yeah, Judy's gonna have to get a boot, Terry. I'm talking to them, not you. Judy, if you don't get a boot, tape whatever toe you think is broken, tape it to the other toe to make kind of a splint. So you don't end up making it worse.
if a bullet is fired outside the muzzle of a gun? In other words,
We are starting with a bang this morning, aren't we? Barking dogs, my husband making noise, StreamYard acting up. I apologize, y'all. The nature of live streaming, I guess. Okay, here we go. I'm going to start over. We're only like a minute in. Let's start over. Hi, guys. I'm Debbie. Welcome to my channel. And now it's going to stop it.
All right, the parties present is heretofore, including jurors, alternates, and the witness. You may proceed.
thank you. Dr. Spitz, before the break, we were talking about guns and the firing of guns and the effect that they have on the human body. And guns fired inside somebody, have you seen the effects of that in your experience?
Yes, I have.
And does damage occur from other mechanisms other than just the bullet going through tissue and hitting bone, things of that nature?
Yes.
What kind of damage occurs other than the bullet striking objects?
The bullet goes from the muzzle straight out.
Well, apparently, my universe thinks it's Monday, not Friday. Yep. Yep, exactly. Oh, Terry, I have a drawer full of braces and wraps and slings and all kinds of stuff. I'm so sorry, you guys, that you're going through that. Believe me, I feel your pain. I have been through many, 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 many. I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing because I know exactly the feeling of, oh crap, there goes something else I have to put in a splint or a brace or tape or whatever. Because all the time.
Particularly the pressure that accumulates temporarily.
The problem is you have not laid a sufficient foundation for pressure, and that's what you need to do. Sustain.
Based upon your education and experience, that pressure changes if a bullet is fired outside the muzzle of a gun. In other words, how did you learn that?
We basically need to reformulate the question.
Dr. Spitz, with reference to a weapon firing, do you have any experience in learning about the pressures that are involved when a bullet is fired from a weapon?
Yes.
And what experience is that?
In this case,
just in cases in general. And
in general, a shot fired into the head
Objection. This is non-responsive.
We need to know your background in measuring pressure or having any knowledge about pressure, doctor. That's what the question is. What training or experience have you had as far as pressure resulting from the firing of a firearm? What is your training and experience in that, if any?
The bullet creates.
Objection.
Again, I need to know if you have any training or experience dealing with pressure itself, not what the results might be. Do you have any specialized training?
Let me back up and
Okay.
ask this question. Dr. Spitz, in your experience, have you ever worked and done work with the people that shoot guns to analyze and determine the pressures that come out of guns? Just yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. Have you read about that particular subject as it relates to your work as a forensic pathologist?
Objection. At this point, counsel is leading. I realize the witness is an expert. However,
I don't think it's leading to ask if he's read anything about it. Overruled.
Yes, I have.
Okay. And you've learned about how guns operate, and did you also learn about the pressures that are involved in the firing of guns, and have you done research in that particular area?
Yes.
Have you ever gone to lectures in the field of forensic pathology that dealt with the pressures that get created when a bullet is fired from a gun as it relates to forensic pathology issues?
Yes.
Is this a subject that is gone into in these scientific conferences that you've talked about and gone to over the years?
Yes.
Have you actually, in the book that you published, have you actually talked about those issues of pressure as far as teaching other pathologists on this subject?
At length.
And how did you, and you must have learned something about that through these other mechanisms or these other experiences, is that correct?
And my own observations and study.
Okay. And taking all of that into consideration, do you know what happens as far as injury to the human body when a bullet is fired from the pressures of a gun?
Yes.
objection, foundation.
Overruled.
Okay. And Dr. Spitz, with reference to that are when an oral gunshot wound occurs, what essentially happens as a result of the pressure, setting aside the damage that the bullet itself causes?
Again, I'll interpose an objection. No foundation.
As to the specifics of the question you asked, I think you need to ask him if he has any experience and if he's able to answer that. Sustained.
You have seen the damage of a gun shot being fired inside the mouth, setting aside damage from the bullet.
Yes.
Okay. About how many times have you seen that actually in the real world, in the real practice of forensic pathology?
If you include intraoral wounds as well as wounds in the head in general, all head wounds, I would say many thousands.
And Dr. Spitz, when somebody fires a weapon in close contact to the head, do the gas pressures cause damage to the human body?
Again, objection. No foundation.
Overruled. Subject to cross-examination. I believe a foundation has been laid.
Those gases that emanate from a contact shot to the head will cause an explosion of the head. In the case where strong ammunition is used, rifles are used, shotguns are used. In the case, gases will expand the cheeks, and in this case, left evidence to indicate that.
Okay. Dr. Spitz, when these pressures cause damage, does the type of weapon used, whether it's a shotgun or a small caliber weapon or a larger caliber weapon, is that something that makes a difference as to the type of damage that occurs?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, and is that because the pressures vary between these weapons? In other words, the pressure from a small caliber versus a large caliber?
Weapons, types of ammunition, of course, yes.
Okay, is that something that you've learned about over your some 50 years experience?
Yes.
And I want to ask you this question now, Dr. Spitz. Did you look at the photographic evidence and the other evidence that was developed during the autopsy of Lana Clarkson to determine how the injuries to her body occurred?
Yes, I did.
And did that include how the injuries from the pressure of the gun as opposed to the bullet itself?
Yes, absolutely.
And in this particular case, the gun was inside the mouth. We've talked about that. Did it cause any damage to the teeth that you were made aware of?
Yes, it did.
And what was your understanding as to how the teeth were damaged?
The teeth were damaged by the blowback and by grating the side of the barrel on the barrel over one of the teeth.
Okay. Was it your understanding that Ms. Clarkson had some artificial crowns in her teeth?
It is my understanding that she had tooth number 8 and tooth number 9, which are the two inside the teeth in the front of the mouth. Those were crowned by I don't know the dental terminology, but suffice it to say that I've got, unfortunately, several of those in my own mouth.
Okay.
But the crown that they had put onto the teeth, on these two teeth, is gone, is broken off.
Okay.
And exposing the actual native tooth.
Okay,
the original tooth.
Okay.
On the picture you see the metal post that holds, that goes into the tooth material and then holds the cap.
Dr. Spitz, in your work as a forensic pathologist, do you ever look at the teeth to kind of take those into consideration as to cause and manner of death? Do you ever look at those issues?
I always look at the teeth, yes.
Okay. And do you look at other structures within the mouth if there's some type of injury or not to that particular area?
Of course.
Okay. You actually look at all areas of the body when you do a autopsy, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. I want to show you what's been marked as Exhibit S, previously as SS. Ask you a question very briefly regarding that. Is it your understanding that this is a picture of the weapon involved in this case, a .38 caliber gun that was used by Ms. Clarkson to shoot herself, and that there was some natural tooth material embedded on the back side of the gun?
This is the sight, the back side of the sight of the gun.
Okay, and was it your understanding that basically the back sight hit the natural tooth material and left a little bit of that on the back side?
Yes. When the gun, you saw in the pictures that where I fired the weapon,
okay,
where the weapon goes up and backwards. And I think that's what caused that.
Okay, and was it also your understanding that the crowns were blown out of the mouth and left at the scene somewhere?
That's correct.
Okay, you saw that in the pictures, is that true?
That's correct.
And do you know how the crowns were blown out of the mouth based upon your education and experience as a forensic pathologist?
The crowns were blown.
No foundation.
Overruled, he's offering an opinion, and I think he's qualified to offer an opinion.
The crowns were blown out of the mouth with the explosive with the explosion within the mouth as of as the gun discharged. In other words, as the shot was fired. Those materials that you saw on the picture, the smoke, the burning gunpowder particles, the non-burning powder particles, the pressure that involved this explosive manifestation when suddenly expanding the walls of the mouth, the cheeks, the lips, the everything in the mouth. And you can see that by the type of injuries that these areas exhibit. And there is a picture, which I hope you'll show me.
Okay, well, we'll get to that, Dr. Spitz.
That is a very temporary, very short-lived explosion. It goes poof and back. But during that poof, those cheeks go way out. And there are some very nasty-looking pictures in my book, which shows what that looks like after it all recedes, when larger caliber bullets were used, where the entire skeleton of the face, not by the bullet broken, but broken by the expansion of the gases and the pressure.
Okay. So that's something that you actually have seen in your work before, is that true?
Many times there are, I don't know how many pictures of different people showing that in that book, because it's very impressive to see that you look at a profile of a human being where the nose sticks out, the eyebrow sticks out, and it's all like a flat line, like as smooth as a wall, okay, as a straight wall.
Okay, I want to get into that picture that you talked about, but I first want to put up a diagram that was done at the time of the autopsy, or it was done, and ask you this question. Based upon the findings at the autopsy, do you know, and this is Exhibit WW, do you agree that this is the trajectory of the bullet that entered Ms. Clarkson's body?
Yes.
Okay, and it went from down to up slightly, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and is there any question about that based upon the autopsy findings?
No.
Okay. Now, if we could have, hold on just a second. Exhibit C to the 9th, Your Honor, put up there, and this is kind of a graphic picture that we use with Dr. Anselmo, and ask you to take a look at this photograph that's been put on the board. Is this the one that you were talking about that shows the damage and that occurred to Ms. Clarkson's mouth as a result of this explosion?
Yes.
And
it doesn't show it that well here because there's too much light in the room. If you lower the light, you'd see it better. Okay. But it does show it.
You want to use the laser pointer and explain to the jury what they're looking at?
Yes. The actual picture shows it better, too.
You can describe what you mean by that, Dr. Spitz.
There is bruising from this stretching, this enormous stretching of there are bruises scattered here. There are bruises scattered abundantly here, except I'm sorry you don't see them as well as the original picture. There are bruises up here. There are a lot of bruises. There's a bruise there in the front. And what you are looking at here, this from here to there and on this side, is what the dentist, it's like a retractor made of transparent plastic, and he pulls the cheeks out so that he can look at the teeth. And he's pulling here and he's pulling there, and you are looking through this, and there is a bruise there, and there are more bruises back there, and there are bruises underneath here. But you see it so much better on the original.
Okay, I think we get the idea. What causes these bruises to the inside of the mouth?
If you took a person's head, or you observed that which I did, where a German textbook where somebody blew his brains out, and they took a high-speed picture. This person, took a high-speed photograph of what he was doing, and you can see how the head goes out.
Okay.
It looks like you would never think it's a human head by the size of it. And then it immediately goes back.
Okay.
Because the skin that is not broken is elastic and goes right back. Just like if I do this and it goes back.
Okay. So, and that's caused by the pressure of the gases?
It goes by this is all elastic, these cheeks.
Okay.
And this all is stretched out by this pressure, and then it comes right back. I mean, this is a fraction of a second, but enough to break some blood vessels.
Okay. And when the blood vessels break, that's when the bruising occurs?
Yes.
Okay.
There's no other rhyme or reason for bruises to occur in the cheek, here on both sides, and here on the attachment of the gum. In consideration of the facts of this case, where we know there is a gunshot of the mouth going from front to back, knowing that there is such a thing as pressure developing inside the head, you'd have to be oblivious to the facts if you don't recognize that.
Okay. Now, when somebody, based upon your education and your years of experience, Dr. Spitz, when somebody pulls a trigger and fires a gun inside their mouth, does anything ever come out of the mouth?
Yeah, blood and gunpowder and the same that is generated into the mouth then comes out of the mouth.
Okay, and do you, as a forensic pathologist, do you ever concern yourself with where this goes to understand what happened and whether or not a person may have pulled the trigger and shot themselves?
Sure.
Okay, that's part of your
That's
evaluation?
part of the considerations in a gunshot wound anywhere.
And was that part of the consideration in this case involving Mrs. Clarkson?
Yes.
Okay. Now, Dr. Spitz, I want to continue on with the issues that relate to the Clarkson and her death on the 3rd of February of 2003. I want to show you, first of all, a picture that's marked Exhibit BB and ask if you recognize this picture. You recognize that, Dr. Spitz?
Yes.
Okay, and I want to show you Exhibit MMM, 3M, M3. Ask if you recognize that picture. While that's coming up, I want to ask you this, Dr. Spitz, is that, was it your understanding from reading the investigative reports, the criminalist reports from the Sheriff's Department, the evidence that was collected at the scene, the odontology records and so forth, that some tooth, natural or unnatural tooth material was blown out of Miss Clarkson's mouth as a result of this gunshot wound?
Yes.
And was it your understanding that it was emitted from her mouth and ended up in the foyer area and also on the stairs?
Yes.
Okay, and you looked at the reports regarding that as well as the photographs of that, is that correct?
I did indeed.
And based upon the reports, is it your understanding that that was determined to come from her as opposed to somebody else?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and how did that occur? In other words, if you could explain to the jury how those teeth, both natural or unnatural, whatever the case may be, how'd they end up where they were?
I described earlier the explosions that occurs in the mouth. That explosion goes out. That is the release. First, it occurs in the mouth is too small to accommodate that large volume of stuff, and it goes out.
Does, looking at this particular photograph, which is M to the fourth.
Excuse me, not only through the mouth, but through the mouth and through the nose.
Okay, let's talk about just the teeth for now. And looking at photograph M to the fourth, or 4 M's, was your understanding that at where the placard 11 and 10 are is where some teeth material was found?
That's correct.
And then there was also some found up against the wall in front of Miss Clarkson. Is that true? Was it your understanding, Dr. Spitz, that all the teeth was in the direction from where her body was located?
Correct.
Based upon that, do you have an opinion, Dr. Spitz, based upon your education, training, and experience, as to which way Miss Clarkson's head was as it relates to where these tooth particles were found?
Probably pointing in that direction.
Okay, and why do you say that?
Because that's the most natural way for that to go.
Okay, and does that take into consideration how the teeth were blown out, but based upon the recoil of the gun?
Probably.
And Dr. Spitz, with reference to the injury that occurred to Miss Clarkson's mouth, particularly her tongue, do you know how that injury occurred?
That injury occurred from the rupture of the tongue surface by this explosive action in conjunction with some opening, probably by the bullet itself.
Okay, in other words, the bullet nicked or grazed the tongue?
Nicked or grazed or split the surface of the tongue, which then, under the pressure within the mouth, ruptured further. This was described in the autopsy report as a star-shaped wound. But then there's another picture which shows it is not really a star-shaped wound. It's a raggedy wound. It's a wound that has...
I know that they have to go through every little thing for the jury, but I still don't understand why we're discussing wound patterns and blood stains and drops, and we know all that's not what's in dispute. We know all that happened, right? We know the gun was in her mouth. We know she had the stellate wound on her tongue. We know the gases that expanded. Like, that's not what's in dispute. What's in, maybe I'm being too nitpicky. I don't know. What's in dispute is who pulled the trigger. So, and if he did it, the barrel of that gun was teeny tiny. If he did it, he was right on top of her. So, all of the blood spatters and stuff would be the same. It's getting monotonous. That's my point. It's getting monotonous. I'm ready for it to be done now. I mean, there have been very interesting witnesses, but the experts, they're just going over the same stuff over and over and over. And this guy, 8 parts. Like, seriously, what else are you going to say that's going to be different from anybody else?
Several individual, it's not like emanating like which comes from a circular center and then 5 or 6 looks like a raggedy, multi-centered injury. And there is a picture which I've seen, which was...
We go through this. We're going to put on People's Exhibit 4. Do you recognize this as being a diagram by Dr. Pena as to his diagramming of the wound?
Yes.
Okay, and then there's also photographs of the wound to the tongue. Is that correct?
Yes.
And on the base of the tongue, you see a bunch of black that he describes as bruising. Is that correct?
Yes.
And then on the left side, as we're looking at this diagram, he diagrams a bruise on the left side. Is that true?
Yes.
And then in the middle, sort of, he's talking about this wound that you say is kind of irregular, but he says it's more star-like. Is that correct?
Yes.
And on the right side of the tongue, there doesn't appear to be, at least in this diagram, People's Exhibit 44, there doesn't appear to be any bruising. Did you see any bruising in the photographs that were taken of this item?
Yes, there is a little bruise. Well, it's not so little, but there's a bruise on the right side of the tongue at the same level as the bruise on the left side, only smaller. And in the middle of that bruise is a small laceration.
Okay.
A small tear.
Okay. The one that's not diagrammed here, but we can see in the photographs?
You can see it in the photograph.
Okay. And as to the bruising that you see in the back of the tongue on the left, as we're looking at Exhibit 44, and on the right, as you've just described it, do you know how that was caused?
When the shot was fired, the
medical word for blah is malaise. But yes, blah is medical term.
tongue was pushed back and slightly up. The back of the tongue, where you see that semicircular, almost semicircular dark area, this area. Mm-hmm. It's not as, on the picture, it is not really as severe as that. But that area knocked up against the border zone between the hard palate, which is bone, and the back of the hard palate, which is soft tissue. The back of the hard palate forms the beginning of the throat.
Okay.
At that end, at that area, the hard palate, which is right in front of it, is ragged and very amenable to bruising a tissue that comes up against it. So if you imagine that there is a sudden yanking of that tongue backwards and upwards, this is the exact area where the tongue will be injured.
Okay, and then on
the injury here, which you don't see on the diagram, but is evident on the picture, hit one of the molars in the back, one of the molar teeth in the back, just the same as this. Only this one did not get a tear, that one did get a tear in the center of it. The picture showed the tear, there's no doubt of it.
Dr. Spitz, why does this bruising occur? What's causing the tongue to move so that it ends up getting bruised?
The tongue lies in the mouth like a little, somewhat curved.
Okay. Maybe I could, we've got an exhibit that is a replication of the tongue in this case. I'm not sure what the number is. E to the 7th, and I'm going to show it to you, Dr. Spitz. This is as an example, and if you could stand and maybe show the jury what you're talking about as far as the bruising. First of all, have you seen Exhibit E7 before?
Yes, I've seen it before.
And does it fairly demonstrate the type of injuries that were existent on Miss Clarkson's tongue after she shot herself with the .38 caliber Cobra?
Yes.
Okay, if you could, basically, why don't you come down before the jury, because it's kind of a small thing to look at, and describe for the jury this bruising that's on the left side of the tongue and the right side of the tongue, and explain to them how that bruising occurred.
May I do that, Your Honor?
Yes.
There is the tongue.
Speak up too, Doctor.
In the person during life, it is more like this. The position of the tongue. This is the area.
Yellow is not his color at all.
Bruising that we were talking about that hit the back of the throat, the back of the palate. is the one bruise on the left side, and this is the other bruise on the right side with a laceration in the middle.
Doctor, if you could come to the center
I
here.
can get them more than these guys won't see it.
Okay, well, why don't you do the best you can, kind of get in the middle. I want to ask you some specific questions. This particular bruise on the left side of the tongue being pointed towards the jury, that you think was made by the teeth?
That was made by the shoving of the tongue by, what more should I say, doing this by the tongue. This is the tongue, this is the tooth in the back, and pushing it against the teeth. Sustaining a blunt injury from the tooth.
Caused by the blast of the gun?
Yes, and the same thing occurred on the right side, only here it hit not a blunt surface of the tooth, but it hit an edge of the tooth.
Okay, and so on the right side, you actually see the impression of a tooth, is that correct?
Well, you see what you see in a bite mark.
Okay, the tooth.
You see what you see in a bite mark. You see even two little dots, which is probably two little protuberances on the, everybody knows that a molar tooth has a structure on its surface, and the edge has a structure, and the structure is kind of, I don't know how to describe it, like hills and valleys.
Okay.
And that's what it had. Okay. That's what you see.
Why don't you go to the other end of the jury box and show them those 2 points?
This is the one on the right side. This is the one on the left side. This is the one in the middle. This is the one at the end of the tongue, that when the tongue was curved like this and the shot came like that, and the tongue was pushed up against the end of the palate. This, that holds your upper teeth. This bounced against it, forcefully a blunt injury here. And this against the tooth, that against the tooth, and that from the pressure in the bullet.
Okay. Thank you, Doctor. If you could, everybody get a chance to see. Okay. Why don't you retake the witness stand now? Dr. Spitz, I'm having put on the projector now at Exhibit D to the 7th, and ask you to take a look at that. And this is a very graphic picture. I apologize for showing it, but this is a picture of actually the injury that was caused to Miss Clarkson's tongue, her actual tongue. And this is typically done at autopsy, is that correct?
Yes.
And can you see on the right side the bruise and the left side the bruise? In the back?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Why don't we first go to the left side, and that's the, we'll get there. The left side, you see that looks like little dots and so forth, and that's the tooth mark that you described to the jury? And this photograph's kind of washed out a little bit, but do you see that on the left side?
Wait a minute. You're talking about this side?
Yeah, and right down below, do you see the tooth marks that we're talking about?
Yeah, these are teeth marks.
Okay. And on the right side, you see the bruising also, caused by the tongue hitting the teeth?
You see, all of these are bruises. This is bruising, there's bruising scattered here. This is where the tongue hit the palate.
Okay.
This is where the tongue hit the palate.
Okay.
And then there's a bruise here. The picture isn't terribly good because of this area here. But there's a bruise here, and that hit the back teeth also.
Okay, and the tearing that's sort of in the center area of the tongue, is that?
This area here is where the tongue, you see on this picture that it's not star-shaped.
Okay.
There's multifocal, raggedy type of thing like this, and these dots are nothing other than gunpowder.
Okay, so you see actual gunpowder injury to the tongue?
Sure.
Okay, and
And these are wounds. You cannot wipe those away. They are going to stay there. Those are little holes, and if you make it your business to prove it, because I've done that many times, because people say, well, how do you know? And the way you know is you make a cut in the tissue, maybe not necessarily in the tongue or in the tongue, wherever it comes up, you make a little superficial, tiny incision, and you dig out a little particle of gunpowder.
Okay. Now, your understanding was that there was abundant gunpowder found inside the mouth in the sample.
Well, I know that, yes, that's what's described in the report.
Okay, and Dr. Spitz, you were here when, we can take this down now, and we could have Defense Exhibit 00 put up. Diagram. Dr. Spitz, let me focus on this area and this question at this point regarding the shooting of the weapon inside the mouth. You were here when Dr. Pena gave an opinion that he thought that the bruising on the one side of the tongue was as a result of somebody shoving a gun inside the mouth and hitting the tongue. Did you agree or disagree with that opinion?
No, I disagree with that.
Okay. And
I disagree with that. You know, under the circumstances of this case, under the facts as beknownst to me with an intraoral gunshot wound and my understanding what amount of pressure that develops. And if you read Medical Legal Investigation of Death and zillions of other books, you will find that there is every explanation for the bruises, the fracture of the palate, this thing here, that fracture of the palate, the knocking out of the tooth teeth, which are the point of least resistance in that mouth, because they're artificial. The teeth that God gave us are strong. The dentist gave us are not so strong. They are the one that flew out. That's why no other teeth flew out.
Dr. Spitz, in your work, you've seen interoral gunshot wounds before. Have you ever seen bruising to the tongue that was similar or the same as what was suffered by Lana Clarkson?
Bruising in the tongue. This bruising here, the picture's gone. But the bruise in the back of the tongue where it hit the palate. Bruising in the tongue scattered on the tongue surface. Like here, maybe not in the same distribution, maybe in a little bit different distribution. The tongue is not such a huge place. But that's routine in intraoral gunshot wounds.
In other words, you've seen that before?
Yes.
How many times have you seen that characteristic type of injury?
You know, this is, I wish you didn't ask me that, because I can never remember numbers of
more than just
how many cases did I see. I've done cases now over 54 years. There's no way that I would not have seen a good average based on national autopsy averages of intraoral gunshot wounds. I always examine the content of the mouth. I do not always necessarily autopsy the body, but I did a fair number of autopsies on intraoral gunshot wounds. And even if I didn't, I would have examined the mouth and familiarized myself with what went on in the mouth and in the head area.
In your opinion, Dr. Spitz, following up on that, would it be possible to just shove a gun in somebody's mouth and cause the type of bruising that you see in that tongue?
Not with this distribution. You have too much symmetry. You have and the bruises have an explanation. You can say, well, disregard your explanation of it hitting the back of the hard palate. Disregard the fact that there was a bullet shot in the center. But how can you disregard it? It did. It was fired from the front to the back and slightly upward. And that is what type of injury you'd expect under those circumstances.
Okay. And would you use the term that those are the characteristic type injuries to the tongue that you would see?
Yes, those I would consider characteristic.
That you've seen before?
I also remember, yes, which I've seen before, and therefore I accept Dr. Peña's interpretation of blunt force injury, because it is a blunt force injury of the tongue knocking against the palate and the tongue knocking against the teeth, because that is blunt force injury.
But not by somebody just poking an object.
Exactly.
Okay. I want to now move to another area and start talking about the material that gets emitted from the mouth when a gun is fired inside the mouth. And you've talked about tissue, blood, gunshot residue coming out of the mouth. Is that called blowback or backspatter?
Yes. Backspatter or blowback.
Okay. If I could have a minute here. I'm going to have you look at another demonstrative video and ask you some questions about that. If you could take a look at this when it gets put up here. You could take a look at this, Dr. Spitz. And first of all, this is the diagram that Dr. Peña draws to the bullet trajectory. And go ahead and play this. Now, Dr. Spitz, with reference to this particular exhibit that shows the trajectory of the bullet, does it accurately show the general trajectory of the bullet?
It does.
And the bullet that was shot into Miss Clarkson's mouth, there was no exit wound, is that correct?
There was no exit wound. The bullet was under the skin in the back of the head.
Hit the back of the skull?
It hit the back of the skull.
Okay.
And was right. They knew that the bullet was probably in there when they just put their hand on the back of the head.
Okay.
It's described in the report.
And Dr. Spitz, there was some testimony by Dr. Peña that maybe some of the bullet came back and caused some of the bruising to the back of the tongue because part of the bullet came back and hit the tongue. Do you agree or disagree with that?
I think you misunderstood him.
Okay.
Because bullets don't come back.
Okay.
Bullets go straight and then fall to the ground. They don't come back.
Okay. So if we could replay this and if you could take a look at the multicolored particles there that get emitted from the mouth, I wanted to ask you a few questions about that before the lunch recess, Dr. Spitz. In your experience in looking and evaluating inside the mouth gunshot wounds, is it characteristic that blood, tissue, and gunshot residue come out of the mouth and out of the nose?
Yes, that's correct, in abundance.
Okay. And why is that? What is happening to cause that, if you could explain that to the jury?
When you introduce an overabundance of material into a confined space, under pressure, you make a little hole, it's going to come out. It's like having a balloon. You fill it up with air, you make a cut in it, and it's going to go poof, and it's going to come out, flying out. If you put little pieces in there, it's going to fly out with the pieces. So that's what's happening here.
Now, when the bullet goes through the back of the throat and through the head, does it release blood and tissue?
When this material comes out from the head, remember that the mouth and the nose are connected in the back. There's like the nose and the mouth, and they're connected in the back and become one. That is the throat back here. And so when it all comes in, it comes forward where that is the route of the logical route, the area of least resistance, nothing encountered, and it flies out there under pressure.
Okay.
From the nose, from the mouth.
And can that material, can it go 3, 4, 5, 6 feet?
Objection. Foundation.
Sustain.
Dr. Spitz, in your career, you've gone to scenes where somebody is dead of a gunshot wound before, is that correct?
Yes.
You've gone to scenes where somebody puts a gun to their head, either their temple or their forehead, and shot themselves. Is that correct?
Yes.
You've gone to scenes where people have put a gun in their mouth and shot. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you've seen the effects of that over the years, have you not?
Yes.
And have you seen both forward spatter, where the bullet goes through the head and ends up going on walls and so forth, correct?
Absolutely.
And you've seen where tissue gets projected out of a bullet wound, exit wound, correct?
I've seen that, and I've seen it come out of the mouth from gunshot wounds in the facial area, in the mouth, or in other facial areas, and cause a stream of tissue that you can find on opposing areas, on tables, on furniture, other furniture, on the carpet.
Okay, you've seen blood come out of you've seen blood come out of mouths before,
Yeah, of course.
and you've been to scenes where somebody shot themselves in the mouth and there's no exit wound, where the tissue, blood, and gunshot residue gets blown out.
Of course I have, because
Objection, non-responsive.
He's answered. You may go on.
And Dr. Spitz, in your experience, have you seen it go more than 3, 4, 5, 6 feet?
Objection, relevance is phrased. It's also vague as to the type of weapon, the type of gunshot.
That's pertinent to cross-examination. The objection is overruled.
Have you seen that?
yes, I have.
Okay, can mist-like or smaller than 1 millimeter blood spatters go more than 3 to 4 feet?
Objection, foundation.
Again, you don't have a foundation for this particular question. At this point, we're going to take our recess. We'll resume at 1:30. Keep in mind the admonition, ladies and gentlemen. The witness will return at 1:30. Thank you.
Okay, we are done with part 3 of Dr. Werner Spitz. And now we are going to go to Karen Reed. It should portal you over there. If you're not going to be joining us for Karen Reed, I will see you on Monday morning for Phil Spector. Have a wonderful weekend. If you're going to go to Karen Reed with me, we're going to portal over, and I will see you in a few minutes. Have a great weekend, and I will see you Monday. Bye, guys.